The life of Thomas Sterley, 1820 settler and legacy builder. The highlights of his life, his pivotal role in shaping the settler community, and the enduring legacy he left behind. The information contained in this video is true and based on the known and researched facts of the life of Thomas Sterley, an 1820 settler and patriarch of many South African families. How do we, as the descendants of those early settlers, account for the lives of people who lived 2 centuries ago? For many of us, this remains a sacred period in our shared history, a time when ordinary men and women were forging a nation, much like others across the colonies and the New World. There's an awe of reverence for these people who brought forth, on this continent, generations of great South Africans. Yes, it may sound a little corny, even cheesy, to echo the words of Abraham Lincoln, but we must remember that these were real people, not distant myths. They had hopes and dreams, faults and failings, joys and heartaches, just like us. To many of us, the 1820 settlers represent the holy grail of our family history, much like the passengers on the Mayflower are to Americans of earlier colonial descent. Their lives were not grandly recorded, yet through determination, faith, and our own patient detective work, we can piece together the truth of their world. A bit like Sherlock Holmes himself once said, "When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." The fact is, they lived in a turbulent historical period. They, like us, spanned 2 centuries and faced upheaval that reshaped their world. The events in France during the 1780s and 1790s, the Revolution, the fall of the monarchy, and Napoleon's rise, shook Europe to its core. France's support of the American War of Independence had drained its treasury and destabilized the nation, leading to revolution and, ultimately, to decades of war. These wars produced men and women of immense resilience. Out of hardship came strength. And it was from that crucible that people like Thomas Sterley emerged, soldiers, craftsmen, and pioneers who would one day cross oceans in search of a new beginning. We must always remember that they, like each of us, were real people. I do not believe they ever thought of themselves as doing anything legendary or world-changing. They were simply getting on with daily life, working, surviving, and trying to make a success of what they had been given. Yet in doing so, they built the foundations of the South Africa we know today. They faced failure, bankruptcy, loss, and disappointment. But they rose again and again, refusing to surrender. The early history of cities like Port Elizabeth records how many settlers fell into financial ruin, only to rebuild their lives with courage and hope. Their stories remind us of our own mortality. Memento mori, you too must die. And yet, as they became legends in our eyes, so may we one day become legends to our descendants. The fact that the 200-year commemorations of the 1820 settlers were largely curtailed by the global events of 2020 should remind us that history often repeats in unexpected ways, and that perhaps, one day, our descendants will think of us as we think of our ancestors today. Early life and family. Thomas Sterley was born in October 1765 in Fakenham, Norfolk. He learned the craft of shoemaking, shaping leather into sturdy boots and shoes with careful, steady hands, a skill that reflected his patience, diligence, and quiet pride in honest work. In 1799, he married in Moorcroft, and together they raised a family. Their children, Thomas Jr., John, Mary, and Lydia, Maria, and James, were born during the years that Thomas served as a soldier. Like many military families of that era, their lives were divided between duty and domestic hope, between the battlefield and the fireside. Military service. Thomas enlisted in the 52nd Regiment of Foot, Oxfordshire Light Infantry, in 1789. He was a disciplined, reliable soldier who rose to the rank of sergeant, serving for decades in some of Britain's most grueling campaigns. He fought under Lord Cornwallis during the campaigns in India, including the first taking of Seringapatam against Tipu Sultan. Enduring searing heat, disease, and long marches across unforgiving terrain, Thomas developed both toughness and compassion, traits that would define his leadership among men. The Peninsular War. By 1808, the 52nd Regiment was in Spain, fighting in the Peninsular War. Thomas, then in his 40s, stood as a steadying presence among younger soldiers. The 52nd, as light infantry, specialized in rapid maneuvers and rearguard actions, essential in the retreat across northern Spain. Through bitter cold, hunger, and exhaustion, Thomas held the line. At Corunna in January 1809, he witnessed the death of Sir John Moore, whose burial on the ramparts became one of the most solemn moments in British military history. Even amid chaos and loss, Sergeant Sterley remained a model of duty and endurance. The Battle of Waterloo. In 1815, at nearly 50 years of age, Thomas fought at Waterloo. When Napoleon's Imperial Guard made their final charge, the 52nd, under Colonel John Colborne, wheeled to the flank and delivered devastating volleys that shattered the French advance. This moment broke Napoleon's final assault and secured victory for the Allied forces. For Thomas, it marked the end of decades of war and the beginning of a new chapter. Post-war years and pension. Following the wars, Thomas continued in garrison service before retiring in 1818 as a Chelsea pensioner, a formal recognition of his long and honorable service to the crown. He was now a veteran craftsman in his 50s, a man who had seen the rise and fall of empires, and who was ready to seek peace in a new world. Emigration as an 1820 settler. When the British government called for settlers to populate the frontier of the Cape Colony, Thomas and his family joined the venture. The scheme promised land and opportunity for those willing to build new lives far from England's shores. In 1820, Thomas Sterley, soldier, shoemaker, and father, set sail for South Africa. He settled in Port Elizabeth, where he resumed his trade and helped establish the foundations of a thriving colonial town. His experience, strength, and discipline made him a respected voice among settlers, and his family's legacy would ripple through generations of South Africans. Legacy and death. Thomas Sterley passed away on October 2nd, 1848, aged 83. His obituary in the Eastern Province Herald recorded his service under Lord Cornwallis in India and Sir John Moore in Spain, his craftsmanship, and his pioneering role as one of the earliest 1820 settlers in the Cape. Though he signed his will with a simple X, that mark stands as a symbol of a life lived with humility, strength, and faith. From Fakenham shoemaker to veteran sergeant, and finally to settler in South Africa, Thomas Sterley's life reflects courage, endurance, and a steadfast commitment to family, faith, and country. Produced by Polly Speaks For You. This video was created using Polly Speaks For You, South Africa's leading dyslexic and disability-friendly software, designed to empower users through voice control, intelligent feedback, and multilingual accessibility. Polly Speaks For You enables people with reading, writing, or communication challenges to express, create, and share their stories with independence, confidence, and dignity. Unlike artificial intelligence, Polly is driven by human design, insight, and compassion, giving a true voice to every individual, regardless of ability. Built and created by a dyslexic descendant of the 1820 settlers, Polly Speaks For You is a labor of love, bridging history, heritage, and modern technology to empower all who use it.